Hello Year 7, I hope everyone is well. This is your 5th lesson on multiplying fractions on Friday the 14th of May. Listen carefully and I'll explain everything you need to succeed in this lesson. Today, you will need a blue or black pen, a red pen, a ruler, and your exercise book. If you need to fetch any equipment, do that now. Before you start your work, remember to write the date and draw margins in your book. Don't forget to always write down which outcome you're working on and the question number in the margin. Your HIR today is on percentage of an amount. Please spend no more than 5 minutes answering the questions in your exercise book. The answers will be shown shortly. Please show integrity by marking your work in red pen. Here is the flowchart for the multiplying fractions unit. Today, we'll be going over P1 and P2. The icons will guide you. There will be a model example to copy down, partially done questions to complete, questions to practice independently, and answers to help you self-assess with a red pen. Before getting into it, let's have a look at this question. How would you calculate 3/5 of 20? Pause and have a go. As some of you recognize, 3/5 of 20 is the same as calculating 3/5 multiplied by 20. We multiply the numerator 3 by 20. This gives us 60 over 5. Then finally, we calculate 60 divided by 5, which equals to 12. So when finding the fraction of a number, it's equivalent to multiplying the number by the fraction. With that understanding, what would 5/6 of 2/3 equal to? As we've seen, this would equal to 5/6 multiplied by 2/3. Multiplying the numerators and denominators, we get 10 out of 18. Recognizing that 10 and 18 have a common factor of 2, we simplify our fraction to 5 over 9. Let's have a look at this question. A quarter of students in a class like red velvet cake. 2/5 of the students that like red velvet cake also like sponge cake. What fraction of the class like both cakes? Just to help visualize what the question is asking, the class is represented as a block. We can highlight a quarter of this block to show the students that like red velvet cake. The question says 2/5 of the quarter like sponge cake as well. Breaking up the block into fifths, we identify the 2/5 who like sponge as well. The question asks, what fraction of the class likes both cakes? Well, we see there are 2 parts of the block that represent that group of people. How many parts are there in total for the entire class? It would be 4 parts times by 5 parts, which equals to 20. Therefore, the fraction is 2 out of 20, or 2/20. This can be simplified as 2 is a factor of 2 and 20. The final answer is 1 out of 10. Did you notice the word of? Let's look at the question again. The question says 2/5 of the students like red velvet cake. What fraction likes red velvet cake? It says a quarter. So the question is essentially asking what 2/5 of a quarter is. And as we saw earlier, this would be equivalent to the calculation of 2/5 multiplied by a quarter. This gets us to the same answer. Pause and have a go at these questions. Okay, half of the motorcyclists are black. Motorcyclists represent 3/8, so we are finding half of 3/8. The calculation would therefore be a half multiplied by 3/8. 1 times by 3 and 2 times by 8 gives us the final fraction of 3/16, or 3 out of 16. The second is slightly different. We are no longer focusing on the motorcycles, but instead the cars. Before continuing, what fraction of the car park represents cars? Since 3/8 of the car park represents motorcycles, and the remaining vehicles are cars, cars must represent 5/8 of all vehicles in the car park. We now have the fraction of cars in the car park. Of these cars, 3/5 of the cars are white, so 3/5 of 5/8 are white cars. The calculation would be 3/5 multiplied by 5/8. 3 times by 5 and 5 times by 8 equals to 15 out of 40. 15 and 40 have a common factor of 5, so to simplify, we divide them both by 5 to give us the final fraction of 3 out of 8. You can either open the lesson PDF or pause this video to complete the questions. Check your answers with red pen. Now on to P2. Firstly, calculate the area of these rectangles. To find the area of a rectangle, multiply the base length by the perpendicular height. So the areas of these shapes are 4 times by 9, which is 36 centimeters squared, and 5 times by 6, which is equal to 30 centimeters squared. With that understanding, how would you then find the area of shapes with these dimensions? We would use the same formula, base times by the perpendicular height. So the area of these shapes would equal to 1/4 times by 2/3, which is equal to 2 out of 12, which simplifies to 1/6 meters squared. And for the second one, 3/7 multiplied by 2/5, which equals to 6 out of 35 meters squared. Pause and have a go at these questions. Just like earlier, we multiply the numerators and denominators. For the first question, the answer is 8 out of 77 millimeters squared. And for the second question, we would have to convert the mixed fractions into improper fractions. 5 times by 1 plus 1 leaves us with 6 out of 5. And 6 times by 2 plus 5 gives us 17/6. Now we can multiply. 6 times by 17 and 5 times by 6 gives us 102 out of 30. 102 and 30 have a common factor of 6, so can be simplified to 17 out of 5 millimeters squared. We can change this into a mixed fraction by dividing 17 by 5 to get the wholes and the remainders. 5 goes into 17 3 times with a remainder of 2. Therefore, the final answer is 3 and 2 out of 5 millimeters squared. Let's have a look at these questions. Pause and have a think. How might you answer these questions? With these questions, we are applying what we know about the concept of multiplying fractions to answer them. When multiplying fractions, the numerators are multiplied and the denominators are also multiplied. There being more than 2 fractions doesn't change that fact. 2 times by 1 times by 7 and 5 times by 4 times by 10 gives us 14 out of 200. 14 and 200 have a common factor of 2, so therefore simplifies to 7 out of 100. For the second question, it's the same concept of multiplying the numerators and the denominators. Let's change the mixed fraction into an improper fraction first. 9 out of 7. What value multiplied by 9 would give us 9, and what value multiplied by 7 gives us 28? The values would be 1 and 4, therefore the final answer would be 1 out of 4, or 1/4. Now, you can either open up the lesson PDF or pause this video here to complete the questions. Make sure to check your answers with a red pen after as they come up. Congratulations, you've reached the end of this lesson. Look after your exercise books so you can bring in your work when you return to school. Have a lovely day, guys.